Steve, first and foremost, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on Bola Itu Life. This is the name of the show. Football is life. We're towards the tail end of your trip in Malaysia.
Yeah.
How was this trip for you?
Oh, very enjoyable. And of course, the games were good, which is important. Apart from the Manchester United game, the games were good, very, very good, but very enjoyable. It's 20 years since the last time I was here. So let's hope it's not another 20 before I come back.
Definitely. It can't be more than 20 years because this show is usually me and a colleague of mine, Faiz, who unfortunately can't be here today. He sent his regards. He's very excited to meet you. But today we want to do something that's slightly different. It's a format that we're trying for the first time on Bola Itu Life, which is we want to look at different types of personalities that exist in psychology and have you relate those personalities to a specific individual that you've either played with or came across or managed throughout your illustrious career. So I've got a list of personalities here, and I'm quite intrigued to find out the connections you make to each and every one of them. Maybe I'll start with the first one. So the first personality, Steve, is the leader, which by definition is someone who is charismatic and decisive. They take charge in various situations. Who's the first person that comes to your head?
Well, the first one is somebody who made my life and gave me chance in life, and the true leader was the great Alex Ferguson. Was just something else, and to play for him for nearly 10 years, for him to make me captain, was another big honour in my life. So without question, on leadership skills, leadership qualities, then there is no better than the master himself, which is Sir Alex.
In terms of having that charismatic presence, what would be like a perfect example of just how charismatic he was as a manager for you?
Well, the one thing that you know straight away when you've played for him was the demand he puts on you to win. It's win at all costs. And if you can't sustain it or get near to what he wants, then you're no use to him. Because his insatiable appetite to win sets him apart. Even when he's won a league or a double, a bit like Pep is now. They never get overawed, they never get too excited. Once they've won it, let's go on to the next one and win next year. It was never enough. Success only lasted a day with him, I have to tell you.
It's the crazy ability to rejuvenate the squad as well, right? Because it's one thing to have that mindset within yourself, but it's another to have it trickle down into a group of individuals and men within the dressing room.
Absolutely, and along them way you have to make big calls. Big players have to leave, and you have to change the squad and bring back that hunger, that energy. That's a skill in itself. And of course, he was the master of it. Not so much in my time. In my time, if you remember, in '95, he let Ince and Kanchelskis and Hughes go, and brought in the class of '92, which is young. And everybody remembers famously Alan Hansen saying, "You never win anything with youngsters."
The rest is history.
The rest is history, correct.
So the first personality, the leader, is Sir Alex Ferguson.
Sir Alex.
The next personality is the nurturer, someone who's compassionate and caring and always looking out for others' well-being.
Well, there's many, many different types of people, and I would like to think that, as a captain, that becomes a little bit of part of where you come from. And one of the great captains I played for was, I'll never forget when I first arrived in Manchester. I was nervous, as you can imagine, and Brian Robson went out of his way. Now here is somebody who's another leader, but also what makes Brian Robson the great player he was, he has an unbelievable humility and way about him, which endears other people to him. So in all of those things, I'll go Brian.
That's really fascinating because what you just mentioned, right, that there is almost this characterization of Brian Robson in popular culture. People remember him as this strict Captain Marvel who is aggressive, who is a leader, and now to find out that he's got the nurturing side of him.
The other side of him, is totally different. He puts on the strip and turns into Captain Marvel, a bit like a cartoon character. Away from it, has a wonderful, wonderful humility about him and humbleness about him. For somebody who was so great, he had that humbleness about him, which made him compassionate.
Would you say that he was the biggest factor behind you settling down at Manchester as fast as you did?
Well, he certainly played his big part, and I never took that away from myself. That when a new player arrived, and I took over from Brian, when a new player arrived in the club, Schmeichel, for example, I took him for dinner. He ends up buying the house next door to me.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, and we lived next door to each other for the best part of 5 years. So it was something that I took with me. That can I help? Can I help the player come to terms with Manchester United, of course, and also can we help him, his family, because that's important too. If to help his wife, kids, if they've got kids, to go to school, what schools can they go to? So basically, try and help them in the whole setup.
I imagine that process is a bit easier these days with the advent of the internet. It allows family members to identify aspects of the city that they might like or might not like in. But I imagine back in the 90s
it's a totally different ball game, of course. And look, the internet and social media has changed the world. It's changed the world. So, but you still need that little bit of compassion.
The nurturer, Brian Robson. So the next character, this is the one I'm excited for. It's the rebel, a person who is non-conformist, challenges norms, and seeks to break the rules. The rebel.
The rebel. Well, I've had many, and I've had many to manage, and that's the art of managing. I had the great Christophe Dugarry, French international at Birmingham, who I signed for Birmingham on loan. He had the best 6 months. He wasn't a rebel, as in he'd always want to train and play, but he was a bit of a maverick that you knew after 6-8 months he'd be wanting to go somewhere else. So he had a bit of a maverick traveller in him. I remember signing Jermaine Pennant. Jermaine, for people who didn't know, I got him out of prison for a driving, and when he was young, he was a complete rebel. However, he played. I got him out of prison, and he had a tag on his ankle, which meant that he had to be back in his flat.
Movements were slightly restricted, right?
Well, he had to be in for 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. He's never been in that time in his life. He had to be, otherwise his alarm would be off and he'd be back to prison. And for those 6 months, he was sensational playing with us. And I still think it was the fact that he was home, he was sleeping better, he was up to no good, he was behaving himself. He went on to play for me for a few years. He then, on the back of playing so well, he then got a move to Liverpool. But he always had that rebel in him, but a nice rebel, which I tried to help along the way. He had a difficult upbringing. So you have to, all of those things you have to put into the pot. But he certainly, I've had a few moments with Jermaine, which I can't reveal on camera.
Completely understood.
I can't reveal, I'm sorry.
What's weird about it, Steve, is that the tagline, the rebel, is sometimes, it comes with a negative undertone, but sometimes there is this argument to be made that some of the biggest stars, some of the biggest mavericks in football have to have a bit of that rebel in themselves.
It's something when I was young and into management, I'd like the rebel. I've signed a few, Robbie Savage and Robbie Savage, and I remember now the manager of Senegal, Aliou Cissé. Aliou Cissé was another bit of a rebel in him, It was, if rebel's the right word, but that fierce competitor where they're going to be a bit difficult to match, but you enjoy the company and watching how they perform.
So the Rebel, a bunch of players, but primarily Jermaine Pennant, based on your
I would
stories.
think so, yes.
Yeah. So the next one, this is fascinating too. The intellectual, a person who's curious and analytical, driven by a thirst for knowledge.
Well, I'm now going to go for my son-in-law, who plays for Salford now.
Okay.
And he's coming to the end of his career. He's called Matt Smith. He's played at Leeds. It didn't start life because he went to school and he went to university because intellectually he was clever, intelligent. So he wanted to have a degree first before he went into football. Then went into football at Oldham, then Leeds, then Fulham and Millwall, and had a really, really good career. And however, I have to say on his behalf, he's just passed a master's degree.
Wow.
While playing football.
Playing for Salford.
But playing for Salford. So playing and then studying at night. He's got a 2-year-old boy as well. So my grandson. But congratulations to him to get a master's degree with distinction.
Yeah.
He has to be the most intelligent, intellectual person that...
In football.
In football.
That you've
he
met.
is in football.
Yeah.
I go to watch him now play for Salford.
Yeah.
And as I said, he's my son-in-law, but he is easily the cleverest, most intellectual, and thirst for everything. He's quite incredibly intelligent.
That's sensational. Do you, when you have conversations with him, which I'm sure you do a lot because he's your son-in-law, when you talk about, when you have football conversations, do you see almost like the download sessions happening where he's absorbing information from you like a sponge?
Even in football, he would know every player at every team. I mean, he just has to look at. Clever people just have to look at something once and they've got it, huh? Well, we have to maybe read it. Well, I have to read it to let it go in. He got it. He's probably that's what intelligence is.
Yeah. Matt, last name
Matt
again?
Smith.
Matt Smith. So
Matt Smith.
Your son-in-law. I'm really curious now.
Who plays for Salford now.
Yeah.
Big 6'6" striker. He is, up until last weekend, I still think this weekend too, he is the top goal scorer at the moment.
League Two.
In League Two and all of England. In any division. He's got 14 goals this season, so he's doing okay as well on the pitch.
All right, I'm
You have to look at him.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look him up after this. Matt
The great
Smith.
thing about social media now, we can Google.
Makes it accessible, exactly. So the intellectual is Matt Smith, your son-in-law. The next one, the Joker, someone who's humorous and light-hearted, often using humor to navigate through life as well as the dressing room.
That is a real difficult one because the jokers in the pack now. There's so many.
But surely there's got to be one that stands out the most.
Who's always the prankster? When I was at Manchester, Brian McClare and Gordon Strachan, through the old days, were the one with a sense of humour, which was sometimes a bit below the belt. Then you get other players who would hide your socks or tie up your trousers that go missing or something like that. That sort of prankster. But it's a difficult one to call. But I'm going to go for back in the playing day again. Was Brian McClare for his sense of humour, which was different to all others.
Could you give us an example?
I can't. I can't. Because I can't. But he's certainly, and another one, intellectual, clever guy, but really dry sense of humour. Really dry sense of humour. Yes.
Brian McClare. Fascinating. Maybe we'll try to have. Maybe I'll try to get that story out of you off camera about
I can't
Brian
say
McClare.
them on camera these days because it goes everywhere. They find them now. Can't just say
exactly.
it.
So the Joker is Brian McClare. The next one, the adventurer, thrives on new excitement and they're always seeking new experiences.
The adventurer. Well, the greatest player I ever managed, and I've just mentioned him there before, was Christophe Dugarry, where when I'm signing him, everybody tells me that he's only going to be here for 6 months. because he'd be on his next journey, his next adventure.
Yeah.
And how true it was. Christoph joined me, helped stay up, won a huge contract. And I remember then we played at Aston Villa, a big game for Birmingham.
Yeah.
Birmingham Aston Villa is a big Midlands derby, yeah. I took Christoph off with 5 minutes to play and replaced him with another guy called Stern John. Stern John equalised in the last kick of the game, last minute, equalised at 2-2. We are very, very happy. Yeah. But I look over in the corner and I see Dugarry not happy.
Yeah.
I'd taken him off.
Yeah.
Next day, he comes in with his contract, rips the contract. Thank you, Steve. The love affair is finished. Over. I hope you honour my contract and let me go. I'm on the next adventure. So, as quick as that, he was gone.
Yeah.
And but I'll never forget what he did. Still the best player I've ever managed.
Yeah.
He was a fantastic footballer, great personality, but that adventurer.
Yeah, I find that incredible because sometimes you'd think that for an individual to leave a long-lasting impression in our lives, that they've got to be present for a significant period. But hey, someone like him just needed 6 months.
He helped us in a relegation fight.
Yeah.
And for 6 months, for anybody who ever seen him in that 6 months, there was one game against Southampton in particular where single-handedly he beat Southampton on his own. He was a magnificent footballer. World Cup winner with France, 55 caps for France. Big Zinedine Zidane's his best friend, so that'll do for me.
Makes a lot of sense. The adventurer, Dugarry. Yeah. So we're coming on to a last few ones. The loyal friend, a dependable and supportive person, and they prioritize the maintenance of relationships.
Well, then you go to friendship, don't you, really? And loyalty goes with friendship. And in football, now I've been in it 45 years. The one thing about being a manager is it can be quite lonely.
Yeah.
You take all the criticism, it's all your fault.
Yeah.
So that's when you need a friend. And I've got many acquaintances, don't get me wrong. But I'll never forget the way Brian was towards me and towards the family. And still to this day, his loyalty is still there towards, I would like to think, towards each other. I don't speak to him every day in my life. I don't have to.
Yeah.
But when I see him, he's my mate and my loyal mate because it's gone on now since I met him in 1987, which is some 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. It's crazy, Steve, because as a player and a manager, you've had your fair share of incredible moments, but then there were also some really tough, dark moments as well. And I'm curious, in those rough, dark moments, is Brian someone you
Brian's
reach
a friend
out to?
do. I have to say, in them dark moments, you need the closest to you, and always the closest to you is family.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when you close ranks. When it starts affecting family, then it becomes a very difficult, very, very difficult job indeed. So you call on friends and family. I could give you friends that people won't know who helped me through it, which are not necessarily in football.
Yeah, but you can briefly mention their name.
I've got 2 or 3 or 4 which are, they know who my friends are, who help you through that little bit of support which everybody needs now and again.
Fair enough. So the loyal friend, Brian Robson, and a host of friends. Host of friends.
A friend who maybe is not in football.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. The next one. The perfectionist, a detail-oriented person with high standards for themselves and others around them.
The perfectionist. The perfectionist. There's that many. When he was young, Some would call it a bit OCD.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the Beckham documentary, then you'll probably understand what I'm talking about with OCD is maybe perfectionist.
Yeah.
Of all the younger players, Beckham was driven with an incredible appetite to play, of course.
Yeah.
And he practiced the free kick
Yeah.
until it was near enough perfect.
Mm.
Numerous times I'd see him as a kid take free kick after free kick after free kick. And you know, when it comes good, when he scores against Greece in the European qualifiers, or take England to the World Cup, then all that practice and that perfection.
It makes sense.
It's the repeated thing that David had was you'd have to drag him off the training ground. He was a wonderful striker of the football, but he made himself that way.
Yeah.
And through practice, he became almost perfect at it.
Yeah.
His dead ball situations, free kick taken. And by the way, it's not a fluke. Ward-Prowse at the moment in the Premier League is another one. Yeah, but I still don't think he's quite hit what Beckham had. Beckham had on his persistence to be, I'll give him the perfectionist.
It's the funny thing about David Beckham is the word that is very often associated with him is that he was a gifted footballer. But what football fans and people that are not involved in the day-to-day process fail to realize is gift is one thing, but it also takes a lot of persistence behind the scenes.
To be successful, you have to be that way. You have to be driven by something. In my experience through footballers, the ones who get to the very, very top are not driven by money. Even though they're awarded, the reward will find them. The great players I played with wanted to be the best player on the Saturday. And the great ones I played with all had that. But I remember David young, when I was getting old and finishing, David was just starting. But I remember him repeatedly trying to make himself better until he turned into one of the great players.
David Beckham as the perfectionist. Final two personalities, Steve. The second last one, the introvert. A person who's reserved and reflective. They recharge through alone time.
Which one is the real quiet one? The real quiet one. I'm trying to give somebody who the viewers will know, or your listeners will know.
I mean, but you can mention anyone, because it's always fascinating to find out. Like, I'm intrigued about Matt Smith now.
Yeah. Do you know? I've never played with him. He's a friend of one of my son, Alex.
Yeah.
And everybody will know him. And I'm intrigued at how he manages, because his personality is quiet. I wouldn't say he's introverted, but his personality is quiet, calm, and he's now managing Middlesbrough, Michael Carrick. Now here is somebody who is quiet and goes along. I'll tell you who else was really, really quiet too, who your viewers will know, especially the old ones. Mark Hughes was really quiet and introverted. When he got onto a pitch, wow, the difference in him was incredible. Off the pitch though, never said very much. Got on with his job, leave. And I've always been intrigued now with Michael, because they're a similar sort of how they are. I've known Michael now a long time through my son, really. And I'll be intrigued at how he does in management. He's done very, very well so far. He's had a wonderful 18 months. You know, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. But the quiet ones are always the ones that you watch.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to keep an eye on the quiet ones, because football is a game of emotions, right? You have emotions taking over yourself, the fans, and that drives you to be loud and boisterous. And in the midst of that, you have this few quiet ones who somehow find what it takes to remain calm and composed in those environments.
But you know, management, You have to try and identify all of the traits in everybody. You are different personalities, the cameraman and this cameraman over here. Different personalities make up life. And that's certainly the same in football. You have many personalities, what different people's makeup. People like to shout and ball. People are boisterous. People like to show off. Some people are quiet and introverted. You know, and some of the, I mean, we've lost the great Bobby Charlton. I've had the privilege to know Bobby, and what a gentleman he is. What a gentleman he was. A fabulous, fabulous footballer, but was just a quiet family man who loved his privacy more than anything. And it's been a privilege to have met him, for such a great, great player. The personality of a man was within himself too.
Great stuff. The introvert. So primarily Michael Carrick then for the introvert.
And Mark Hughes.
Mine, Mark Hughes, yes. The last one, Steve, the optimist. A person who's positive and constantly hopeful because they're always seeing the bright side in any situation.
Well, my son has just gone to work. Is the new manager of Macclesfield. His boss is Robbie Savage, who Robbie, I had the privilege to manage. I signed him from Leicester. He made himself a crowd hero at Birmingham for the way he was. He was never a dark moment. He was always the eternal optimist. For a start, he always thought that he was the best player on the pitch when he wasn't. But he was always optimistic, never down, always there's another day. It'll be interesting to see how Alex gets on with him in his new job, but I'm sure he will. But I signed him, and yes, he was hard working in a lot of ways, Robbie, but the eternal optimist was Robbie. It was never a dull moment, and he was always optimistic that we could win next Saturday.
You know, Steve, if you bring up that Birmingham City team to most Malaysians who grew up watching the Premier League in the 2000s, I'm pretty certain that the first name on everyone's mouth would most likely be Robbie Savage. He epitomized almost that team,
what the Birmingham people want and what they wanted. He's got a heart the big as himself. He ran around. He wasn't blessed with great ability, and he would say that, but there's nothing wrong with that. He made the most of what he'd got. Sheer enthusiasm, sheer optimism. He was terrific at Birmingham. I don't think for them 3-4 years the Birmingham people really, really adored him. That's why I said to him when he was adamant that he wanted to go to Blackburn, I can understand maybe you want to play for Mark and Mark Bowen, but you know, you'll never have the adulation of what the Birmingham crowd give you, because they associate you with them. Hard work, endeavour, tough. Wanted to have a little fight or a scrap or whatever, cause problems. But he played very, very well for me.
Robbie Savage, then the eternal optimist.
Correct.
For Birmingham City. So that sums it up. We went through, I think, 10 characters and personalities. Some really fascinating characters and stories in there. I just want to thank you so much, Steve.
No problem.
For taking the time to do this.
No problem at all.
It's been an absolute honor, hearing stories of you when you were playing, because my uncle was a major fan, and then watching you manage, and now having this opportunity to have a chat with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve, and hopefully we'll see you back in KL real soon.
I hope to see me back soon. I hope it's not 20 years, and thank you, KL, for looking after me so well. Thank you.
Bola itu live bersama Steve Bruce.